He thought he fired a middle manager with a tidy desk. What he actually did was pull the trigger on the only thing keeping the company alive. And I'd been loading that chamber for over a decade. The moment he slid that termination letter across his mahogany desk with those ridiculous finger guns, he signed his company's death warrant. I just smiled, placed a single white envelope on his desk, and walked out. No name, no note. Just 15 years of patience crystallized into one perfect moment of destruction. My name is Alexis Rowe. And for 15 years, I was the invisible spine holding Arclight Dynamics upright. Not that anyone noticed. Senior Compliance Specialist, the kind of title that makes eyes glaze over at cocktail parties. But on that Tuesday morning in March, Derek Hanford, our shiny new VP of Operations, was about to learn exactly what happens when you rip out a spine. He'd commandeered my office for the occasion, sitting in my chair like he'd conquered it. The termination paperwork lay between us on my own desk, arranged with the precision of a blackjack dealer setting up the house win. Derek wore his Harvard MBA-like cologne. You could smell it from across the room. "Nothing personal, Alexis," he said, doing those insufferable finger guns that men like him mistake for charisma. "But we're streamlining, pivoting to AI-driven compliance solutions. The future doesn't need—" He gestured vaguely at me, at my sensible blazer, at my 15 years of institutional knowledge. All this overhead. I picked up my chipped ceramic mug, the one from the 2009 company picnic, back when we still pretended to care about employees, and took a final sip of cold coffee. The termination letter sat there, corporate beige against mahogany, waiting for my signature. 2 weeks severance for each year of service. They'd even calculated it wrong. Typical. AI-driven compliance, I repeated, letting the words roll around like marbles in my mouth. How fascinating. Derek leaned back in my chair, still my chair for another 7 minutes according to the termination timeline, and launched into his rehearsed speech about efficiency metrics and digital transformation. I stopped listening after synergistic optimization. Instead, I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a single white envelope. No address, no name, just pristine white paper containing 15 years of careful preparation. I placed it dead center on the desk, right on top of the severance calculation. "What's this?" Derek's finger guns finally lowered. "A parting gift," I said, signing the termination letter with my favorite pen, the Mont Blanc I'd bought myself after saving the company from its third federal investigation. "You'll want to open that after I leave. Maybe wait until Gareth gets back from Europe." Gareth Lowell, our CEO, who thought compliance was something you delegated and forgot about. Who'd hired Derek specifically to trim the fat from our operational costs. Who had no idea that the fat he was trimming was actually the heart keeping the patient alive. I stood, tucked my pen back into my pocket, and picked up my cardboard box, already packed. Because I'd seen this coming the moment Derek started measuring offices and talking about hot desking. The few personal items rattled inside, a photo from better days, my emergency blazer, the USB drive I definitely wasn't supposed to have. "That's it?" Derek seemed confused by my lack of protest. "No exit interview? No knowledge transfer?" "Oh, Derek," I said, allowing myself the smallest smile. "I've been transferring knowledge for 15 years. Every email marked urgent that you archived unread. Every compliance memo you called ass-covering spam. Every quarterly reminder about operational requirements that you forward to trash. It's all documented, time-stamped, notarized, in some cases." His confusion curdled into something else. Not quite fear, not yet, but a tickle of unease, like when you realize you've forgotten something important but can't remember what. The walk to the elevator was a funeral procession in reverse. Heads prairie-dogged over cubicle walls. Some wouldn't meet my eyes, the survivors, already calculating their own expiration dates. But Marina from payroll watched me pass with the expression of someone witnessing a very slow, very deliberate car crash. She knew. She'd processed enough termination paperwork to recognize when something was different. The elevator arrived with its cheerful ding. a sound I'd heard roughly 15,000 times over my tenure. As the doors began to close, I saw Derek through the glass walls of my former office, holding the white envelope up to the light, as if he could read its contents without opening it. "Goodbye, Arclight," I whispered to the closing doors. The company had exactly 72 hours left to live. It just didn't know it yet. 15 years. That's 3,900 days of keeping Arclight Dynamics from eating itself alive. When I started in 2009, we were 40 employees crammed into a warehouse that smelled like printer toner and ambition. The filing system was milk crates. The server room was a closet with a box fan. And compliance? That was me. A fresh-faced 30-something with a shiny new certification and the naive belief that people actually wanted to follow rules. God. I was young. My first week, I found 17 federal violations just sitting in plain sight like unexploded ordnance. The CEO back then, Gareth's predecessor, a walking heart attack named Bill Thornton, had been signing contracts he hadn't read, making promises we couldn't keep, and filing reports that bore only passing resemblance to reality. I fixed it all. Quietly, methodically. The way you defuse a bomb, one wire at a time, holding your breath. By 2012, we'd grown to 200 employees and our first real acquisition, Pinnacle Solutions, a boutique firm that did something with blockchain before anyone knew what blockchain was. The merger documents came to me on a Thursday. Due diligence deadline, Monday. I worked 72 straight hours, sustained by coffee and the kind of focus that comes from knowing you're the only thing standing between your employer and federal prison. That's when I created it. Article 12F of the Operating Charter, hidden in subsection J, paragraph 14, of a document so dense that even our lawyers just skimmed it. A single provision that tied our federal operating license to the continuous employment of a certified compliance oversight specialist, specifically, one meeting certain credentialing requirements that, coincidentally, only I possessed in the entire company. If that position was ever terminated without proper transition protocols, our license would automatically void, not suspend. Void, like it never existed. Was it petty? Maybe. Was it insurance? Absolutely. I tried to warn them. At first? Really? I did. In 2013, I sent a memo with critical succession planning required in the subject line. Gareth's response? Handle it. In 2015, during what they called restructuring, but was really just panic-firing middle management, I specifically outlined the 12F requirements in a presentation. I still have the PowerPoint. Slide 23 was titled, How We Could Lose Everything in 72 Hours. They laughed. Actually laughed. Someone made a joke about Y2K paranoia. The 2018 SEC investigation should have been their wake-up call. We were hours from an 8-figure fine when I found the loophole, a technicality in the filing dates that nobody else had noticed. I worked with the federal investigators for 6 months, feeding them exactly what they needed to see, nothing more, nothing less. We escaped with a warning. My reward? A coffee mug that said Compliance Ninja and a 2% raise that didn't even match inflation. But I kept meticulous records. Every email they ignored went into a folder labeled CYA Critical. Every verbal dismissal got documented in writing and sent back as a, just to confirm our conversation, follow-up. When Derek started his efficiency audits in January, marking departments for optimization, I knew my time was coming, so I prepared. The week before my termination, I assembled the package, 43 documents, each one notarized, each one establishing the chain of warnings I'd given about Article 12F. The crown jewel was Derek's own Slack message from February. Rules are meant to be bent, Alexis. That's why they're not called laws. I set up an automated system, elegant in its simplicity. The moment my company credentials were revoked, it would trigger a cascade. First, an email to the Federal Bureau of Operational Integrity with my complete compliance package. Then, notifications to our 3 largest clients about the status change in our federal certifications. Finally, a courtesy notice to our insurance carriers about potential operational modifications. All perfectly legal. all technically required under various disclosure agreements I'd made sure were signed over the years. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I was simply ensuring that the proper authorities were informed of material changes to our operational status, as required by law. The beautiful irony? I'd automated myself out of a job, just like Derek wanted. Only my automation was a dead man's switch, and he'd just pulled the trigger himself. As I sat in my apartment that first night, unemployed for the first time in 15 years, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving. The good stuff. The kind you drink when you're either celebrating or committing arson. I raised my glass to the empty room. To Article 12F, I said, may it rest in chaos. Somewhere across the city, that white envelope sat on Derek's desk like a ticking time bomb. Except it wasn't ticking. The explosion had already happened. He just hadn't heard the sound yet. The warnings. God, the warnings. If ArcLight Dynamics ever goes under, they can't say I didn't try. I documented every single attempt to educate them about Article 12F like a detective building a murder case. Except I was trying to prevent the murder. And the victim kept loading the gun themselves. Quarterly emails became my specialty. 4 times a year, like clockwork. I'd send out the reminder. Subject line: Q3 2019 Compliance Update, Critical Succession Requirements. The body always started the same way. This email serves as your quarterly reminder regarding Article 12F of our operating charter, which requires. The responses were a masterclass in corporate apathy. Gareth. Thanks, Alexis. Filed for review. Translation. Deleted immediately. Derek's predecessor. Do we really need these constant reminders? My favorite came from the CFO. Can you make these emails shorter? Maybe use bullet points. I started using bullet points. I highlighted key sections in red. I attached infographics. Actual infographics I paid a designer to create, showing how our operating license connected to the compliance role like a Jenga tower with one critical piece. The response? Someone from marketing asked if they could use my infographic style for the company newsletter. In 2020, during the pandemic when everyone was suddenly very interested in business continuity, I thought I'd finally gotten through. We had a whole Zoom meeting about critical points of failure. I screen shared a document titled Single Points of Catastrophic Failure with Article 12F at the top in 72-point font. Derek, newly hired and eager to make his mark, actually unmuted himself. Alexis, isn't this a bit dramatic? Catastrophic failure. We're not a nuclear power plant. You're right, I said. When a nuclear plant fails, there are backup systems. We don't have backup systems. He laughed. They all laughed. Little Brady Bunch squares of executive faces, all finding my concern hilarious. I screenshot that Zoom meeting. 9 faces mid-laugh while I explained how the company could implode. It became my desktop wallpaper for motivation. The Slack messages were even worse. I'd drop reminders in the leadership channel, always professional, always precise. Reminder: Article 12F requires 90-day transition period for compliance oversight role. Please initiate succession planning. Derek's response never varied. Followed immediately by him posting a GIF of someone filing paperwork into a trash can. Once, he sent a meme of a skeleton at a desk with the caption, Alexis waiting for us to care about compliance. I saved everything, screenshots with timestamps. Email read receipts, showing messages opened for 3 seconds then archived. The Teams chat where someone called my warnings, Alexis's monthly panic attack. The all-hands meeting where Gareth introduced me as our resident doomsday prophet to nervous laughter from new hires. January 2024 was when I shifted from warning to documentation. I created what I called the inevitability file. Every ignored email got forwarded to my personal account with a note. Attempt number 2147 to warn about 12F. No response received. I started BCCing my lawyer on particularly egregious dismissals. She thought I was paranoid until she read Article 12F herself. Then she started charging me reduced rates out of sympathy. The week before Derek scheduled his efficiency review of my department, I sent my final warning. Not to him. I knew that was pointless. I sent it to the board of directors, all 7 of them, via certified mail to their home addresses. The letter was brief. Dear board members, this serves as formal notice that termination of the compliance oversight role without proper transition protocols will trigger Article 12F of the operating charter, resulting in immediate license revocation. This is not a theoretical risk. This is a when, not if, scenario. I have attached 15 years of unheeded warnings for your review. Respectfully, Alexis Rowe. Only one board member responded, Margaret Stern, the only one who actually read things before signing them. She called me directly. Alexis, is this real? When I confirmed it was, she sighed. I'll try to talk to Gareth. She tried. I know because Gareth forwarded me her email with a note. Please reassure Margaret that we have everything under control. I reassured Margaret. I told her everything was documented. All risks were noted and all warnings were given. I didn't tell her I was already packing my office. My last Slack message in the leadership channel posted at 4:47 p.m. the day before my termination. Final reminder, Article 12F is not a suggestion. It's a suicide pact you signed in 2012, and tomorrow you're going to pull the trigger. Derek's response, dramatic much? Marina from payroll liked my message. She knew what was coming. She'd seen the termination paperwork Derek had filed. She'd also seen my name hard-coded into our federal licensing database, a detail Derek never bothered to check. That night, I organized my warnings chronologically, printed them all out, and put them in a binder labeled, I told you so. 560 pages of ignored expertise. It sat next to the white envelope, waiting for its moment. The preparation was surgical. A week before Derek's scheduled efficiency review, I knew exactly what was coming. His assistant had accidentally included me on a calendar invite titled AR Termination Planning. AR, Alexis Rowe. At least they could have used a code name with some creativity. I spent that week like a chess player setting up a checkmate in 12 moves. Every piece had to be perfect. Every document had to be unassailable. Every timestamp had to be legally bulletproof. I wasn't just preparing for termination. I was preparing for war. First, the Federal Bureau of Operational Integrity report. 43 pages of meticulous documentation showing willful negligence regarding Article 12F. I had it notarized 3 times by 3 different notaries, each one reading it with growing alarm. The third one, an elderly woman named Dolores, actually asked, Honey, should I be pulling my retirement funds from any companies? Just ArcLight Dynamics, I told her. She laughed. Then she saw I wasn't joking. The report included everything. Emails, Slack screenshots, Zoom recordings. Yes, I'd recorded them all. One-party consent state, perfectly legal. Even a transcript of Derek's infamous rules are meant to be bent speech from the 2023 Christmas party. But the masterpiece was Appendix J, a detailed timeline showing every single warning I'd given, cross-referenced with the company's own email servers to prove receipt and reading. I uploaded it all to a scheduled email system, not some amateur Gmail delay, but a proper dead man's switch through a legal document service. The trigger? The moment my company email account was deactivated, HR always killed email access first, like clockwork, usually within 10 minutes of termination. They thought it was security. I turned it into a countdown. The second component was client notification. Our 3 largest clients, Meridian Corp., Hashtag Industries, and Chen Global Banking, all had contractual clauses requiring immediate notification of any material changes to operational compliance status. I drafted those contracts myself back in 2016. Nobody else bothered to read the fine print. The notifications were bland, professional, just stating facts. Please be advised that, as of timestamp, ArcLight Dynamics has experienced a material change in compliance oversight that may affect federal operating status per Article 12F of the operating charter. Just facts, no accusations, no emotions. Let the lawyers fill in the implications. The insurance carriers were trickier. I needed them to understand the severity without triggering immediate cancellation. So I used their own language against them. This notice serves to inform you of potential modifications to our risk profile that may require reevaluation of current coverage terms. Insurance companies speak fluent paranoia. They'd be calling within hours, but the white envelope, that was pure theater. Inside was a printed copy of everything, yes, but formatted like a legal filing. At the top, in 14-point Times New Roman, notice of self-executing charter violation. Below that, in smaller text, effective immediately upon termination of Alexis Rowe. I included a copy of Article 12F, highlighted in yellow, with handwritten notes in the margins showing the exact statute violations it would trigger. At the bottom, my signature and a single line, delivered by hand to prevent any claim of non-receipt. I also included a USB drive, not with additional evidence. That would be overkill. Just a single PDF, my resignation letter from 2 years ago that Gareth had refused to accept, claiming I was too valuable to lose. Irony has a way of aging like fine wine. The morning of my termination, I made one last preparation. I called our federal licensing office directly, not to report anything, but to verify a technical question about license status checking. I recorded the call. So just to confirm, I said to the helpful clerk named Bradley, if a license is voided due to charter violation, how long before it appears in your public database? Oh, it's immediate. Bradley chirped. The system updates every 15 minutes. Voided licenses trigger an automatic flag to all associated federal contracts within 72 hours. 72 hours, I repeated. That's very efficient. We pride ourselves on transparency, Bradley said. I saved the recording as Bradley Confirms Timeline, MP3, and added it to the package. My phone buzzed. A text from Marina in payroll. Derek just submitted your final termination paperwork, effective at 10 a.m. I'm so sorry. I looked at the clock. 9:47 a.m. 13 minutes. I opened my laptop one last time, confirmed all systems were ready, then closed it with the satisfaction of a conductor finishing a symphony. Everything was automated, everything was legal, everything was their own damn fault. At 9:58 a.m., I stood up from my desk, straightened my blazer, and picked up my cardboard box. The white envelope lay centered on my desk like a headstone. Inside that envelope was 15 years of I told you so, crystallized into legal consequence. At exactly 10 a.m., Derek would hand me that termination letter. At 10:10 a.m., my email would be deactivated. At 10:01 a.m., the avalanche would begin. I smiled. It was a good plan. No, it was a perfect plan. Because the best revenge isn't breaking the rules, it's using them like a scalpel. Gareth Lowell landed at JFK at 6:43 a.m. on Thursday, 3 days after my termination. He'd been in Brussels, finalizing what he thought would be ArcLight's expansion into European markets. The deal of a lifetime, he'd called it in the company newsletter. $400 million in potential revenue. Offices in London, Berlin, Prague, his legacy secured. He was still in the Uber when his phone exploded. I know the exact timeline because Margaret Stern, the only board member with a functioning brainstem, called me afterward. She needed someone to explain what had happened, someone to help her understand how a company could go from champagne toasts in Brussels to cardiac arrest in 72 hours. He didn't even make it to the office, Margaret told me. The driver said Gareth screamed so loud he thought someone had died. Someone had ArcLight Dynamics. Time of death, 10:10 a.m. Tuesday. Gareth burst into the office at 7:31 a.m., still in his rumpled travel clothes, tie askew, pulling his luggage behind him like a panicked tourist. The white envelope was waiting on his desk where Derek had finally, belatedly, thought to put it. Next to it were 17 missed call notifications from the Federal Bureau of Operational Integrity, 9 from Meridian Corp's legal department, and 1 text from his wife asking if she should be worried about the FBI van parked outside their house. There was no FBI van. That was Gareth's paranoia. It was just a plumber. but paranoia has a way of making every van look federal. He tore open the envelope with the desperation of someone opening medical test results. His hands were shaking so badly that Martin Briggs, our general counsel, had to read it for him. Martin was 63 years old. He'd been a corporate lawyer for 40 years. He'd seen everything from embezzlement to espionage. But when he read Article 12F, his face did something I'd never seen before. It went from pink to white to gray in about 6 seconds, like someone was draining the color with a syringe. "This can't be real," Gareth said. This is a bluff. She's trying to scare us into rehiring her." Martin set the paper down very carefully, like it might explode. "Gareth, I drafted the merger documents in 2012. I remember this clause. I told you then it was unusual, but you said Alexis knew what she was doing. So it's real? I need to make some calls." Martin made 11 calls in 30 minutes. Each one made his face grayer. The Federal Licensing Office confirmed, license voided as of 10:10 a.m. Tuesday. The State Department of Corporations confirmed, operating charter in violation, status suspended, pending review. The SEC confirmed, investigation opened into potential fraudulent operation without proper licensing. "How long to fix it?" Gareth asked. "Fix it?" Martin laughed, but it sounded like choking. "Gareth, you can't unfire a bullet. The license isn't suspended, it's voided, dead. We'd have to reapply from scratch. That takes 18 months minimum, assuming they'd even consider us after this violation. Can we rehire her? Reverse it?" The clause specifies continuous employment. The moment she was terminated, the countdown started. Even if she walked in right now and agreed to come back, the chain is broken. It's done. Gareth grabbed his phone and started texting me. I still have the messages. 10:47 a.m. Alexis, we need to talk. Urgent. 10:52 a.m. Please call me immediately. 11:03 a.m. This is a misunderstanding. We can work this out. 11:15 a.m. I'm prepared to offer you significant compensation. 11:28 a.m. Name your price. 11:45 a.m. Please. I didn't respond. I was at a coffee shop, watching our stock price on my phone. It hadn't moved yet. The market didn't know, but it would. Margaret Stern was already calling an emergency board meeting. Someone would leak. Someone always leaks. At noon, Gareth called Derek into his office. According to 3 different sources who heard it through the glass walls, the conversation went like this. "You fired our compliance oversight specialist. You told me to cut redundancies. Did you read her warnings about Article 12F? She sent a lot of emails. Did you read them? I skimmed. Get out. Gareth, get out." Derek left the building carrying his things in a Whole Foods bag. The cardboard boxes were all taken. Too many people clearing their desks, anticipating the bloodbath to come. At 2 p.m., Martin Briggs delivered his legal opinion to the board. ArcLight Dynamics was technically operating illegally. Every contract signed, every transaction processed, every invoice sent since Tuesday at 10:10 a.m. was potentially fraudulent. The liability wasn't just civil, it was criminal. At 2:47 p.m., Gareth sent me one last message. "You planned this." At 2:48 p.m., I finally responded. "I planned for this. You executed it." At 3 p.m., trading was halted on ArcLight stock pending material disclosure. Gareth Lowell, the man who'd built ArcLight from 40 employees to 4,000, who'd graced the cover of Businessweek with the headline, "The Future of FinTech," sat in his corner office surrounded by the trophies of his success and realized he'd just become the captain of the Titanic. After the iceberg, after the water rushed in, after the band stopped playing, Derek was dragged back from the Meridian Golf Club at 3:45 p.m., still wearing his ridiculous salmon-colored polo and plaid shorts. Security found him on the 7th hole, 3 beers deep into what he'd assumed would be a victory celebration. After all, he'd just optimized 15% of operational overhead. He was expecting a bonus. Instead, he got Martin Briggs and Gareth Lowell waiting in the conference room like disappointed parents. The same mahogany table where Derek had pitched his AI-driven compliance revolution just 2 months ago now held evidence of his catastrophic ignorance. "Sit," Gareth said. One word, but it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. Martin had arranged the documents like a prosecutor's exhibit, email after email, printed and highlighted, Slack messages blown up to 14-point font. The pièce de résistance was Derek's own PowerPoint from January. Slide 23 circled in red. Legacy compliance systems are obsolete. "Tell me," Gareth said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What exactly did you think Alexis did here?" Derek was still drunk enough to be defensive. She pushed paper, filed reports. We can automate. She was the named specialist in our federal operating charter. Martin interrupted. Her specific credentials, her continuous employment, were legally required for us to exist as a company. Derek blinked. The alcohol was wearing off fast, replaced by something cold and sobering. That's insane. One person can't be that important." Martin pushed forward a stack of papers 6 inches thick. "These are the warnings she sent you. 143 emails over 2 years, each one explaining Article 12F, each one marked urgent. Your assistant confirms you received them all. I get hundreds of emails. Here's the Slack message where you called her warnings, as covering spam." Martin continued. "Here's the Zoom recording where you laughed at her presentation about critical failure points. Here's the team meeting where you said, and I quote, 'Compliance is where ambition goes to die.'" Derek's polo shirt was developing sweat stains despite the aggressive air conditioning. How was I supposed to know it was real?" "By reading," Gareth exploded, finally losing control. "By doing the bare minimum of your job. By listening to the woman who'd kept us out of federal prison for 15 years. We can fix this," Derek stammered. "We'll hire her back, double her salary, triple it." Martin actually laughed. "She won't come back, and even if she did, it wouldn't matter. The license is void, dead. We are technically not a company anymore. We're just 4,000 people playing pretend in an expensive office. But the Brussels deal, gone. Meridian pulled out an hour ago. Hashtag is demanding immediate return of all prepayments. Our insurance carriers are threatening to retroactively cancel coverage. We have 72 hours before the feds formally announce our status. And when they do, every contract we have becomes toilet paper." Derek stood up, wobbling slightly. "This is her fault. She sabotaged us. We should sue." "Sue her for what?" Martin asked. "Following the law? Documenting everything? Warning us repeatedly? She didn't pull the trigger." "Derek, you did. You fired the one person whose job description was literally keeping the company alive." Gareth pulled out his phone and showed Derek a message thread. 48 messages I've sent her since this morning. Begging, offering her anything she wants. You know what she finally sent back? Derek leaned in to read the single line of text. "I remain comfortable with my termination." "She's not gloating," Gareth said. "She's not demanding anything. She's just done. And so are we." Security was waiting outside the conference room. Not the friendly guys who usually checked badges and smiled at Christmas parties. These were the serious ones, the ones they called for actual terminations. "Clear your desk," Gareth told Derek. "You have 10 minutes. And Derek, if I ever see you again, if you ever apply to any company I'm even tangentially connected to, I will personally ensure you never work in this industry again." Derek's last words before security escorted him out were, "It was just compliance." Martin Briggs, 40 years of legal experience, winner of countless corporate battles, looked at Gareth and said, "That's exactly what everyone says, right before they lose everything." By 5 p.m., Derek Hanford's LinkedIn profile had been deleted. His company email bounced back. His parking pass was deactivated. It was like he'd never existed at all. The only trace of him left was his name on the termination letter that had started the avalanche, right next to mine. The collapse was magnificent in its totality. like watching a skyscraper implode in slow motion, each floor pancaking into the next with mathematical precision. By Friday morning, ArcLight Dynamics was a corporate ghost story that lawyers would tell their junior associates for years to come. The legal department died first. Within 24 hours of the license revocation, 17 attorneys resigned simultaneously. They knew what was coming: personal liability. Every contract they'd reviewed, every deal they'd approved since Tuesday was potentially fraudulent. Martin Briggs himself cleaned out his office at 2 a.m., leaving only his resignation letter and a bottle of scotch with a note: "You'll need this more than me." Customer service became a war zone. Meridian Corp wasn't just pulling out, they were demanding immediate return of 6 months of prepayments, claiming breach of contract. Haystack Industries went further, filing an emergency injunction freezing all of ArcLight's assets. Our biggest client, a Fortune 500 company I can't name for legal reasons, simply ghosted us. Their lawyers sent a 2-word email: "Cease immediately." The employees knew something was catastrophically wrong when the vending machines stopped working. Our payment processing had been frozen. Imagine 4,000 people realizing they couldn't even buy a Snickers bar on company credit. That's when the real panic started. Marina from payroll became an unexpected hero, working 18-hour days trying to ensure people got their final paychecks before the accounts were seized. She called me Thursday night, crying. "I'm trying to prioritize the junior staff," she said. "The ones living paycheck to paycheck. But there's not enough money. The accounts are being frozen faster than I can process payments." "It's not your fault," I told her. "I knew," she whispered. "When you left that envelope, I knew this would happen. I should have done something." "What could you have done? Convince Derek to read his emails?" She laughed bitterly. "He had your warnings set to auto-archive. I saw it when I was fixing his expense reports. Every email with compliance in the subject line went straight to a folder called Later. He never opened it, not once." By Thursday afternoon, the media caught wind. Fintech giant ArcLight Dynamics loses operating license in bizarre compliance failure, ran on Bloomberg. TechCrunch was less kind. How one fired employee accidentally destroyed a $2 billion company. My personal favorite was from the Wall Street Journal. The 60-second mistake that erased 15 years. Gareth tried everything. He called senators, congressmen, golf buddies in the FDA who might know someone in operational licensing. He offered to donate millions to federal retraining programs. He even tried to claim it was a clerical error, that I'd never really been terminated, that it was all a misunderstanding. The Federal Bureau of Operational Integrity's response was beautiful in its bureaucratic finality. The violation of Article 12F represents a self-executing charter breach. There is no appeal process for non-existence. Non-existence, that's what we were now. Not bankrupt, not suspended, non-existent. The exodus began Thursday evening. First the executives with golden parachutes, then the senior developers who could land new jobs with a phone call. By Friday morning, entire departments were abandoned. The AI team Derek had hired to replace me, they were the first to go. Ironically, turns out artificial intelligence is smart enough to recognize a sinking ship. Someone started a betting pool on when Gareth would resign. The smart money was on Monday. They were wrong. He lasted until Friday at 4 p.m., sending a company-wide email that was equal parts apology and accusation. Due to circumstances beyond my control, triggered by the reckless actions of a former employee who chose destruction over dialogue, I never finished reading it. I was busy reviewing a job offer from Pinnacle Solutions. Remember them? The company we'd acquired in 2012. They'd spun back off 6 months ago and were doing quite well. Their CEO, Jennifer Wu, had called me Wednesday morning. "Alexis," she'd said, "I need someone who actually reads the fine print." "I'm expensive now," I warned her. "After what you just did, you're worth it. Name your price." I named it. She didn't even negotiate. The last official act of ArcLight Dynamics was a mass email from an automated system at 5 p.m. Friday. "This domain will expire in 30 days. Please update your contact information." 4,000 employees. 600 million in revenue, 15 years of growth. All of it undone because one man couldn't be bothered to read his emails. I got one final message from Gareth that evening, not begging this time, just 3 words. You destroyed everything. I considered responding, explaining that I'd tried to save them, that I'd given them every opportunity. That destruction requires action, and all I'd done was stop preventing their self-destruction. Instead, I sent back 2 words, check your emails. Then I blocked his number and opened a bottle of champagne. The good stuff. The kind you drink when you've won a war you never wanted to fight. Monday morning. 6 days after the termination that ended an empire, I sat in my kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows I finally had time to clean. Sipping coffee from a new mug, one without any corporate logos. My phone buzzed occasionally with recruiters, headhunters, and reporters. I ignored them all. There was only one message I was waiting for. It came at 9:47 a.m. Ms. Rowe, this is Jennifer Wu from Pinnacle Solutions. Your office is ready. We've also received your first compliance report, 13 potential violations identified and corrected before they became problems. Welcome to a company that actually reads their emails. I smiled and typed back, just doing my job. The news about ArcLight had evolved from breaking story to cautionary tale. Business schools were already adding it to their curriculum. The ArcLight paradox. When efficiency becomes extinction. Harvard Business Review ran a piece called The 60-Second Decision That Destroyed a Unicorn. My personal favorite was a Reddit thread titled, Company Fires the Person Keeping Them Legal, Dies Immediately. Derek Hanford had vanished completely. LinkedIn, gone. Twitter, deleted. Someone spotted him at a career fair in Phoenix, desperately trying to explain a 4-day gap in employment that had somehow destroyed a $2 billion company. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in Scottsdale. His bio carefully omits his time at ArcLight. Gareth Lowell tried to salvage something from the wreckage. He started a consulting firm called Phoenix Strategic Solutions. It folded in 3 weeks. Turns out nobody wants business advice from the captain who steered straight into an iceberg that sent him 43 separate warnings. Marina from payroll landed well. I'd recommended her to Jennifer Wu, and now she handles compensation for Pinnacle. She sent me a text last week. New company policy. All compliance emails are read within 24 hours. You'd love it here. I did love it there. My new office had a window. My emails got responses. My warnings were treated as warnings, not punchlines. It was everything ArcLight could have been if they'd just listened. But here's the thing about revenge. The real satisfaction isn't in the destruction. It's in the quiet afterward. It's in knowing that I gave them every opportunity to save themselves. I documented every warning, highlighted every risk, practically drew them a map away from disaster. They chose to use that map as kindling. 3 weeks after ArcLight's collapse, I received a package, no return address, but I recognized Martin Briggs's handwriting. Inside was a single document, the original 2012 merger agreement with Article 12F, highlighted and annotated. A sticky note was attached. You were right, every time, about everything. This should be in a museum as a monument to corporate stupidity. Instead, I'm giving it to the only person who deserves it. Frame it or burn it, your choice. Martin P. S. I've started reading every email twice. I framed it. It hangs in my home office, right next to my compliance certification and a photo from ArcLight's 2009 Christmas party, back when we were small enough to care about each other. Before optimization and efficiency became more important than expertise. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty, if I regret destroying all those jobs, all that value, all that potential. The answer is always the same. I didn't destroy anything. I was the foundation. And they chose to demolish me. The building was always going to fall. I just made sure they understood why as it happened. The white envelope, I kept a copy. It sits in my desk drawer. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a sword or a gun or even a lawyer. Sometimes it's just an envelope. And the patience to let someone else pull their own trigger. There's a certain poetry to it, really. They wanted to trim the fat, streamline operations, embrace the future. They succeeded. They trimmed away their present, streamlined themselves into non-existence, and embraced a future where arc-light dynamics is nothing but a cautionary tale told in business schools and boardrooms. As for me, I'm doing fine. Better than fine. I'm thriving in a company that understands that some rules aren't meant to be bent. They're meant to keep you alive. Derek was wrong about one thing. Though, rules aren't like laws at all. Laws give you a trial. Rules just give you consequences. And I was never the judge or the jury. I was just the court reporter, documenting everything while they held the gun to their own head and complained about the paperwork. They pulled the trigger themselves. I just made sure everyone knew who loaded the gun. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate karma and the importance of reading your emails. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Are you Team Alexis, or do you think she went too far? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of workplace revenge and corporate justice. And share your own thoughts about whether you've ever witnessed similar compliance disasters in your career. Until next time, remember, always read the fine print, especially when it's highlighted in yellow and sent 43 times.